The Asus ZenBook 14 is the new-look adaptation of Asus Lead Ultrabook series for 2022. Refining the hypothesis as opposed to wasting time, the ZenBook 14 is slimmer than its 2021 partner. However, it's accessible in a similar brand name Asus ZenBook. And by the trackpad serves as a numeric keypad, an element we've seen on ZenBooks for a surprisingly long time now. To see where the new ZenBook 14 raises the stakes than last year's UX 425 model, you want to look in the engine. They highlight more forward-thinking Intel processors, 12th Gen Alder Lake-P versus 11th Gen Tiger Lake. The most recent chips highlight more centers, permitting you to run more things without a moment's delay, as well as promising a general lift in execution. The presence of Alder Lake-P likewise implies that the new ZenBook 14 can accompany more current LPDDR5 type RAM and a Wi-Fi 6E module. In straightforward terms, this implies that stuff ought to run somewhat more rapidly than previously, and furthermore your Wi-Fi will be a piece quicker. Plan and build. Charming plan, accessible in dim blue or silver, pretty much light to the point of holding in one hand. Enough ports for most working circumstances without requiring a dock. Asus ZenBook PCs have for some time been jazzy and great, and the 2022 model is no exemption. An extremely thin-looking gadget you'll have the option to handily hide away in a courier sack or backpack. It follows configuration prompts set by past ZenBooks. However, rather than the typical concentric turn metal coats, Asus has carved lines from its Star Trek-esque logo into a level completion. The standard bended corners are likewise out, with Asus presently choosing a more precise look. The deck is trapezoidal, with the most extensive part looking up. Tastefully, it's still miles from something like the Asus TUF Gaming A15. Yet it's a stage change. The exemplary Asus Ergo Lift component is available. The state of the PC's 180-degree pivot sees the deck somewhat raised up off of the outer layer of your work area when open. This apparently fills two needs. It implies that the console is shifted somewhat towards your hands, considering more open to composing. And it likewise implies that warm air from the air vents on the base can get away from the framework no sweat, in spite of the fact that Asus has added a subsequent air vent on the left-hand edge as well. The impact here is less articulated than on more seasoned models, yet at the same time observable. The ZenBook 14 gauges a simple 1.35 kilograms, which is light by 14 in PC norms. The HP Pavilion 14 isn't substantially more at 1.46 kilograms, and it's lighter than the Microsoft Surface Laptop Studio 3 in 1 second, which weighs somewhere in the range of 1.74 kilograms and 1.82 kilograms. It's nearly essentially as light as the 1.29 kilograms Apple MacBook Air M1, yet the ZenBook 14 is more liberal port-wise. That extra 6 grams is worth the effort. Console and trackpad. Very much dispersed console that is not difficult to become familiar with. Extremely responsive and well-measured trackpad. NumberPad 2.0 trackpad mini computer will partition assessment. The Asus ZenBook 14's console is truly good to type on, and the trackpad is acceptably estimated and responsive. However, I'm not completely sold on the utility of the NumberPad 2.0 element. The console design is to a great extent reasonable, and the keys snap back pleasantly. The keycaps feel somewhat dainty, yet there are no indications of wobble or anything that gives me reason to worry. Everything feels reassuringly solid. I could see myself involving this as an everyday driver for the following couple of years. There are anyway 2 or 3 explicit protests. The enter and the hash keys are excessively firmly found, and the enter key itself is excessively little for my liking. A ton of Asus workstations have a comparative console design, so on the off chance that you've utilized a ZenBook previously, you're presumably acquainted with this setup. However, there wasn't a day during testing when I didn't coincidentally type hash when I intended to make a line break. Talking about which, it's not difficult to flip the NumberPad, the trackpad's secret component incidentally. A long push on the upper right corner of the trackpad sees a numeric cushion and mini computer keys blooming into life, sending off a number cruncher application on the showcase. In principle, this is a clever, efficient element. By and by, it's a faff. It's extremely off-kilter to utilize, on the grounds that occasionally while you're attempting to type in, say, 4 separated by 2, the trackpad will at times accurately decipher your finger cuts and see a number show up on the mini computer, and afterward the outcome once you hit the equivalent sign. Screen and speakers. 14 and 2560x16.0 touchscreen with 16:10 perspective proportion. 100% sRGB variety space inclusion. Accessible in LED or OLED variants. Twin Harman, card-in-tune speakers. The new Asus ZenBook 14 territory is accessible with 2 showcase choices, one with a standard IPS type LED, and the other, an OLED. I was sent the last option for testing. The LED models guarantee top brilliance of 400 nits, while Asus says that an OLED ZenBook 14 will throw out a limit of 550 nits. Asus likewise guarantees that the two models will cover 100% of the standard RGB variety space, and that implies in genuine terms that the ZenBook 14 will show sights, computerized craftsmanship, and photographs with a serious level of exactness. While I can't affirm assuming the LED form accomplishes this, I can affirm that the OLED model totally does. Utilizing a Spider X Pro colorimeter, I recorded full sRGB range inclusion, and saw 96% of the Adobe RGB space covered as well, alongside 95%, and the vast majority of the NTSC and DCI-P3 variety spaces, separately. This implies that whether you're handling your photographs in sRGB or Adobe RGB, the Asus ZenBook 14 will give you a decent glance at what you're working with. In more negative news, most extreme brilliance I recorded was 375 nits. Actually, I think this is fine for indoor use, yet you will battle to work outside. It is likewise very distant from the publicized greatest. Variety temperature at 25%, half, and 75% splendor was 6,400 Kelvin. And at full brilliance I recorded 6,500 Kelvin, the nonpartisan perfect balance you'll need for regular tones. As it's an OLED type show, where any dark regions are really dim pixel, the difference proportion is 0:1, which is similarly great as it gets. Specs and performance. Burst through office assignments with negligible quarrel. Fans can get uproarious while you're running bunches of applications. Battery will go on around 11 hours for a typical working day. The Asus ZenBook 14 took care of fundamental office undertakings and light photograph altering easily. However, as there is no committed illustrations processor ready, games frequently moved at a creep. The unit I was sent highlighted an Intel Core i5-1240P processor, which highlights 12 centers, an essential clock speed of 1.7 GHz, supporting up to 4.4 GHz, and Iris Z coordinated design. This sits close by 16 GB of LPDDR5 RAM and a 512 GB SSD, 475 GB of which is client accessible out of the case. Everyday undertakings like word handling and web perusing experience no noticeable log jam, even with upwards of 12 Firefox tabs open and a YouTube playlist going. Photograph altering is sensibly expedient, if all you believe that should do is rapidly resize, crop, and change light level. It required just shy of 3 minutes to open 84 JPEGs in GIMP. For purchasers who believe a flexible PC should do the essentials, the Asus ZenBook 14 will more than fulfill. Battery duration and charging. The entire day battery duration. 65W charging. Battery duration is likewise decent, contingent upon what you're doing. An hour of Civ 6 saw a full battery drop to 60%, for instance. I had the option to complete an 8-hour working day, with about a similar left in the tank. Circling a 720p video with the brilliance locked at 120 nits saw the battery most recent 11 hour and 14 minutes. Different workstations will keep going for longer, however, taking into account that OLED shows are gas hogs. This is great going. From unfilled, hope to get around 25% of juice after 30 minutes and 45% following 60 minutes. Energizing back to full from level requires around more than 2 hours utilizing the provided 65W charger. Finally, thanks for watching my video. See you next time.